Hey guys, Comic Boom here with finally the DarknightNation has returned. My American friend, my amazing writer and creator of Area 51, the Helix Project, Trevor. Am I gonna say your name? Trevor Fernandes-Lenkiewicz.
Yeah. You got it, man.
I nailed it. I nailed it. Right on. Well, it's so good to have Trevor, DarknightNation back. I've been so involved with just reviewing DC Comics. I've been so busy on different things. I know, Trevor, you've been busy working on your project where you're working on issue 4, correct, of Area 51?
Yeah, so I've written the whole series. It's done in that regard. But yeah, so issue 4, we're on art right now. A little bit more than halfway through with that. And we'll probably launch the Kickstarter for issue 4 sometime in mid-January. It was a tough decision because we got thrown off a little bit time-wise. And then I didn't want to like have a campaign during like December just because of the winter holidays, and I didn't want people to feel like they had to choose between buying a loved one a gift and like buying this comic that they wouldn't get for like another 2 or 3 months. So yeah, we're looking at about January, and by then 4 will definitely be done, and we'll probably be halfway done with 5.
Oh man, that's awesome. I know that it was touch and go there for a while because we were all suspenseful. We wanted to fund wanted you to fund an issue 3, and you did that, and I'm looking forward. I still haven't got issue 3. I haven't got mine in the mail yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the newsletters, but every week I've been updating. So FedEx lost the first 400 copies of the book, which I had expedited to me. They would have been in about 2 weeks ago. But yeah, ye old Federal Express has just taken their time, and fortunately my printer has been great to work with, and last week they started reproducing the first 400 issues of the book, or 400 copies of this issue, I should say. And they sent that out to me, so I will hopefully have issue 3 in hand sometime this week. At this point, I don't like to make my expectations exceed reality, so we can only hope.
Well, I guess my focus here is I want to. I've read the PDFs of issue 3,
Mhm.
and I'm so, as I said to you, I said all the questions I have for you today. I mean, most of them I don't think you can answer because you'd have to ruin the ending to your story, which you claimed you've already written, which is good to know, because there's nothing more frustrating. I know when I read a story and I feel like the writer doesn't know where the story's going. Like Bendis. I wonder why guys like him, I guess you build a name for yourself. You don't need to know where your story is going. But in any event, the art here is fantastic. Tell us something about, the writing we'll get to, but tell us something about your creative team, just to remind people who you're working with, because you advertise a very diverse international sort of cast. So, tell us something about them.
Yeah, so I'm working with talent from all around the world. My art team mostly consists of guys from Brazil and Spain. My interior artist is from Spain. My colorist is from Brazil. My colorist is from Brazil, and my variant cover artist is from Spain. And the variant cover art, which you'll see behind Rocky and I on the screen for issues 3 and 4, that artist will be working with me on my next full-length project, which is super exciting. So he, like I said, he did that cool King's Gambit, which is the title we've given that cover behind Rock, and the sort of broken cover behind me, amongst other things. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, I mean, so my interior artist and a cover artist, his name is Marcelo Salaza. My colorist's name is Marcio Freire. Those two have worked with the likes of Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray. They've been in the industry about as long as I've been alive. So there is that experience factor there. And my variant cover artist is just this ridiculously talented young guy out in Spain, not more than a couple years older than me. And what really excites me about working with him, his name is Adrian Bone, is that I think that, at our ages, we're kind of starting out above the curve for most people in our age range. And I think that we could really grow together and end up kind of inspiring one another to go beyond what we might have otherwise been able to do.
Yeah. And I'm curious because you spoke at length, that very passionately, about what your ideas were. You'd spoken with me in the past, and with Jason, some others, and the way that this has, the journey that you've had from making this from concept to reality. I know you've had a lot of sort of uphill moments, frustrating moments. What's been the
Mhm.
most rewarding for you? Because the last time we spoke, you'd finally just got into the Comic Con circuit. I'm just wondering, what have the rewards been and some of the pitfalls?
Well, at Baltimore Comic Con, somebody came up to me. They made like a high quality trading card of me,
Yeah.
and asked me to sign it for them. So that was kind of surreal. I did not I mean, I don't really think I expected that ever, but not like a year into making comics would
Was it
I
actually
ever.
you on the card, or was it your character on the card?
No, it's me. Like he really dug for this photo because I haven't used it publicly since like my first Kickstarter. Yeah, there's a photo of me. It was like well designed, had my name on it and everything. The only thing that would have made it crazier if he had like some arbitrary like stats on the back of the card or something, but it was incredible. So that was really cool. In terms of general reward, I think for me is just like when I have readers reach back out, just to let me know like what they thought of the book, and it's really rewarding for me, particularly because it's such a personal story. When people can say that they connect with it and that they can identify with some of the struggles that these characters are going through, or I mean, when it comes to like the inside baseball, if there's like a sort of small scene that I really, really worked hard on curating the visual experience and grabbing somebody to read at my pace, when they say that it really worked for them, that's great because there are things that I feel like I do sometimes that go unnoticed, rightfully so. But it's cool when somebody's able to pick apart those things, particularly because I like to use silence as much as I can to punctuate what's happening on the page, and I also don't believe in overwriting. And I mean, comics are a visual medium. If I wanted to write a prose novel, I'd write a prose novel, but I want to make comics, so
Yeah.
I have to capitalize on that.
I'm one of the things that really stands out for me when I'm always big on theme and metaphor, and to me, I can get past, and I can forgive even art that I'm not a fan of. By the way, I love the art here, but what I'm getting at is the story is what it all comes down to, the story. And if you don't have a story to back something up, it doesn't really matter how good the art is, quite frankly. And
Hmm.
uh, you have a wonderful quote that you give at the beginning of issue 2. You quote Neil Gaiman, where he says, "Fiction is a lie that tells us true things over and over." And if there's one thing that I'm curious how that quote. I mean, you must have used that quote for a reason. What is the fiction that you're telling? What is the lie that's telling? What's the true thing that you want to remind readers of in the story of Area 51, the Helix Project?
Yeah, I mean, this story primarily for me was one about identity and all of the ways that it or the lack thereof identity can contribute to who you are as a person, and what you're able to do. Um, and agency was a really, really big thing for me because I think that's so thoroughly tied into the way that we understand who we are and our sense of self. So I mean, I suppose the lie that I have shared with you is this crazy sci-fi conspiratorial world where the U.S. government is so desperate during the Cold War that they start forcibly grafting extraterrestrial DNA into soldiers in order to create bioweapons. The truth that I'm telling you is that the moment you give somebody command of who you are and your identity and your sense of self is the moment that you lose everything. Because your awareness of who you are is perhaps the most powerful tool you could ever bear. And that's a clear swinging point, for Kent in this series. I mean, once he begins to come to grips with who he is and where he comes from, is kind of the moment that things begin to work a little bit more in his favor. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what we're going for here. I mean, and there's more to it, thematically, the story is also about absolutism. It is about, the awareness of mental health, and that does tie into the identity angle. Um, it's a really personal story. I think it's easy
Yeah.
to identify with.
One of the things I just want to point out is, and I was genuinely shocked because I knew that this was your first, your first foray into comics, first creator owned, and if I'm brutally honest, I honestly expected this. I didn't expect this to be as good as it was, and we are friends. We've partied in New York City together at New York Comic Con in 2019, so people might think I'm saying that just to be biased, but truly sincerely it's not. I'm actually impressed. One of the things that impressed me the most and I just I'm using a random example of a page from issue 2. I'm surprised at how patient you are in telling your story,
Mm,
because i'm I'm surprised that you don't jump into this story. You take the time to show movement, to show facial expression, to you're clearly describing to your artist what you want to be conveyed, and you don't rush to every scene. You don't rush to every plot point. This is a story that is taking its time, and you clearly have something to say. And now, the great thing about that is that it's building a lot of suspense. It's also creating a heck of a lot of frustration on my part because I'm at the end of issue 3 and I want to know what the hell's going, what the hell's happening. And anyways, it's extremely effective. My question to you is, did you ever question that? Because I I would
mm.
think that would take a lot of discipline because you're taking your time telling this story in a way that I think that I don't see a lot of writers do. That in my experience as a reader, the discipline you have is actually quite remarkable. So I'm curious, how do you maintain the patience at this?
Um, well, thank you, first of all. But in terms of answering your question, really, I have a big philosophy about creating stakes that make the plot matter. I think sometimes writers, veteran and new alike, will get really interested in just the empirical nature of their story. And for me, I don't think any of that matters unless there is an emotionality or a heart to it, something for me to resonate with. So I really wanted to spend the time for people to connect with these characters, to either care about them or generate questions around them, and to get a sense of who they are, Um, because really, like, whatever I do to Kent, whatever happens to Kent, his losses, his failures, his successes, you won't care about them unless you care about him. Like, they don't matter. I could do the coolest possible thing on the face of the earth come, issues 5 and 6, but they wouldn't matter if you didn't get a sense of why they are either a net victory or a loss for the character, or something in between. So and it was also, me playing off of my influences. Like the way that I tell stories is influenced by cinema as much as it is comics. And in terms of comics, I've really taken to a lot of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips crime stories. I mean, he employs a lot more sort of stoicism in his characters, but the way that him and Sean Phillips pace out their stories, I think is really interesting because they're all right with just kind of having a silence or a silent beat for you to kind of focus in on the character's body language or the character's facial expressions. And I think that that ultimately contributes to developing that sense of awareness around the characters, the little things, you know. And I don't know. I mean, when it comes to setting up like the shots and the layouts and the oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I'm only like halfway through this coffee. Um, the compositions of the page, like I see them as very rhythmic values. You know, I've compared comics to music a lot, and the panels being individual, sort of rhythmic.
Well, how much of
Values.
that was you? Was that, or was it? I mean, your artist Marcelo Salazar, was it primarily him, or did you find yourself, deeply collaborating with him, or were you letting him sort of take the panels where they would go, or was that a how in depth were those conversations?
I mean, I write pretty full scripts. So when it comes down to it, oftentimes my script will describe the camera angle, the framing of the shot, um, the subject matter within the panel. So what's the expression? What's the gesture? What are we trying to push? There are times, you know, where we've definitely had back and forths where Marcelo has like disagreed with something that I've done, and we'll talk about it. And if I think he presents a really solid argument, I'm okay with changing it. It doesn't happen as much. For example, if you were to go to issue 1, I'm sure you remember that double page splash in issue 1. Uh, hopefully you remember it. It takes place
Yeah.
in the past. Um, he did not want to do the black silhouettes um, on that page, which I like fought tooth and nail. I was like, no, I think it's visually gonna draw the eye. I think it's like page 13 or 14 or something like that. Um, so yeah, so Marcelo was not. Yeah, I think it's a couple more pages. Um, Marcelo was not very apt to using silhouettes with the white rim lighting for the next page. Uh,
Okay.
and I was like, no. I was like, I think that it's far more striking. I think you silhouette the two main figures on the scene, on the shot, and you use that high contrast white rim lighting, and then you have the red there. It's really going to draw the eye. I think it's going to make that moment last a lot longer in the reader's mind. Um, and so we stuck with it. But there are other times, like the end of issue 2, where I had a very specific camera angle. Marcelo made a suggestion with another camera angle, and we ended up going with the shot that he chose. But I would say that most of the, and I might not spoil the end of issue 2 because that's a big one, um, as you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I hope that answered your question. So yeah, I tend to be very visual in the way that I work, and because that's just how I think of things. And if Marcelo has a different idea, I'm always open to talking about it and seeing what's going to work best, because ultimately that's what I care about most. But yeah.
Yeah, I now my next question. I commented about the character before we went live. I commented on the character of Marissa, and now Marissa is this young girl who who Ken's father saved at the beginning of issue 1, and and of course Ken's father is revealed ultimately to be an alien, and he ends up getting unfortunately loses his life because of a misunderstanding with a police officer. But this Marissa character, she actually ends up growing up and becoming a very significant character in the story.
Mm.
And I'm just kind of curious, who when you thought of Marissa, what character inspired her? Because she end up becoming a very kick-ass character. She's a young girl who experiences a trauma but has her life saved by Ken's father, ultimately growing up to be a kick-ass either action hero, or maybe she's a wild card. I'm not sure.
Mm.
I'm as interested in her character as I am with Ken's, to be honest. I'm wondering what
Mm.
the inspiration for Marissa was. When you thought of the character template for Marissa, was who did you think of?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I I think out of all the characters, she probably came out like the most fully formed from the get go. To be honest with you, I had a little bit more of an idea of who she was, what her motivations were, and how I could use that to present both a helping hand and a challenge for somebody like Kent. You know, she is in many ways a mirror to him, and I thought that was going to be really interesting. You know, pairing her up as she, you know, she's almost a co-lead of the book, but not quite, just shy of being a co-lead. And so I thought that the contrast between their natures would be just a really interesting storytelling tool, especially when it comes down to embracing those themes of identity and mental health and loss. So yeah, I mean, by all means, she is my wild card. She's also like the catalyst. Like if you really think about it, she is the catalyst to this whole story. She is the thing that causes Kent's father Roswell to make that sacrifice. You know, he knows full well going into that moment that everything is about to change for him. And one of the things that I really enjoyed in issue one in that flashback, before he approaches the officer, he kind of knows that like either he's going to get captured or murdered. Like he walks not too close up to Kent, and he takes his finger and he puts it up to his lips, and he goes up to his son, and it's this really like tragic moment where he's basically asking his son like not to grieve for what he's about to see. And for me that was this really striking moment, you know, because he loses what he thinks to be his final moments with his son. Um, and but this all kind of goes back to her catalyzing that moment. And again, as you can see in issue two, you know, she's spoilers revealed to be the M character that sends Kent a letter at the end of the first issue, and she catalyzes another event that leads into Kent uncovering a few lies around the circumstances of his father's death. And yeah, so yeah, I don't know what inspired her. I just, when I knew that I wanted to have a female supporting character, part of it was that I was so tired of like the damsel in distress and like the whiny kind of I don't know, like I just
Yeah,
I
she's no
wanted her to
damsel
be.
in distress, man. She's no, she's. I mean, she. You have her, the conduct, her behavior, and how she clearly, at least initially, appears to be on. Well, she appears to be very much on Kent's side, but it's interesting. You said she's like the mirror. She's Kent's mirror, and I'm trying. By the way, for those listening, I'm trying very carefully. I don't want to give spoilers away as I'm talking because I want people to enjoy Helix Project, Area 51 Helix Project for themselves. But you made the comment that Marissa is like the you know, Kent's reflection in the mirror, and I'm thinking to myself as you said that, in the mirror darkly, because
Mhm.
I think she's definitely the darker side of Kent, uh, and it's very interesting how her life was changed by that pivotal moment where, you know, Kent's father saved her life and how it impacted her life, not just Kent's. And so in a way, they're almost like brother and sister that are separated and then are reunited many years later to sort of finally come to a head to sort of deal with the issues that that they were robbed of in their youth. So I think it's very
Yeah,
well done thematically.
thank you. Yeah, so the major thing for me is that um they're so different, but their lives were very much shaped and impacted by that same moment. And for me, I thought it was interesting to explore how that one moment would generate two totally different lives out of it. You know, they're like approximately the same age when it happens. Um and it's just I thought exploring that aspect of trauma was interesting because people deal with trauma so differently. I think one of the things you'll see, particularly on social media, is like this desensitization of people, and they will trivialize the things that other people go to. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm sure I've done it to people before too. And writing the story has been a sort of huge lesson in that because both of these characters, they responded totally differently to that event. Kent, to him, it represented this huge loss of agency, and it generated this self-damning conflict within himself, where he is not he has a hard time identifying with both his extraterrestrial and his human heritage. Like, how tragic is that? I think it's tragic enough when somebody in the modern world or in the contemporary world can't identify with one part of themselves that is so sort of benchmarked into who they are. But like,
Yeah.
imagine having no solace in any aspect of who you are and who you identify as. That's hard. That's terrible to deal with.
Yeah.
And it very much robs him of a real sense of agency. And
Well,
so for me, I thought he was an interesting character to explore, because I think the idea of taking a protagonist who is not, I mean, he's not the coolest character. Like, when you meet him, he's not cool at all, actually. He's
just my commentary on that and my observation is that, I look at Marissa. Marissa spent her life after that traumatic event when her life was saved. I mean, here's Kent. Kent almost goes into a shell and becomes overprotective of his mother, afraid of losing her. It seems like, and he almost. I don't know. I'm speculating here as a reader. I almost think like he's using his mother as an excuse. Like he didn't try to do any investigating in many ways. He sort of like he became very introspective within himself, whereas Marissa, her entire life changed. She very proactively in her life went to investigate and take certain measures to look into the incidences which the book dives into, which I don't want to spoil for people. But I really find it interesting that Kent's the one who has this alien heritage, yet it's Marissa who's the one that really proactively does it. So that I thought that was a very interesting dichotomy, the way those two characters came into play, and that
Mm.
and so I thought it worked very well. And this sort of leads into my another question I have that you just hint at I think very acutely, but you don't say much about it, and I think it's very effective. It is Kent's relationship with his mother,
Mm.
which is which you sort of hint at, and I gotta, and might be a too personal question for you, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. You don't have to answer it, but I know that you're close to your mother,
Mm.
and I'm wondering if does your relationship with your mother reflect on this, or am I just barking up the wrong tree?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I mean, I think there's a piece of me in every character in this book, um, even in the mother,
Mm.
and I think that there was a part of me that really wanted to explore um, central aspects, I think, to my personality through these different characters and sort of extrapolate them. Um, uh, so yeah, absolutely. I mean, every story that I think anybody writes, they're trying to work something out for themselves, almost selfishly. Where I'm basically asking you to pay for my therapy, but with pictures. So, and I think that's true of most creatives. Their art is them trying to wrestle with a question that they've yet to answer for themselves, and they're trying to find a natural conclusion um, by placing it in a different world of their own design, that is, hopefully, if they do it well, suited to bring them another step closer to finding their answer. um, so yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I think um, was most one of the most appealing things for me to do between like characters like Kent and Marissa is understand that like they both have very in what's the word I'm looking for, they both have very complicated views of one another, and they're pretty well fastened. Kent makes some pretty insightful observations in issue 3, when she kind of brings him to the safe house and he's kind of wrestling with the events of the last 24 hours. um he makes some pretty astute observations about her, and she is clearly like she could probably predict, if they played a game of chess, she'd beat him in probably 5 turns, because she'd know every move he'd make.
Yeah.
So they it's ironic because they lack this awareness of self, but they're really intuitive characters in the way that they take in what's around them. They just respond totally differently. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
that was really
Well,
interesting.
like you said,
Also,
they have that bond from when they just that. It's interesting that they only have that one really traumatic life experience where they experienced together that was set forth at the beginning of issue 1, and yet you get a sense that they have an intuitive bond, like you said, with each other. They know how to. Kent does seem to have a sense of where maybe she's coming from, and she does him, and yet she very much is more the darkness and he's the light. And I find it very interesting and a testament to Kent's character. And of course, you called him Kent for a reason. I know that. It's sort of I know as a fan of Superman, and you even
Mhm.
had. I gotta give a call out here, man. There's a fantastic scene where, you know, there's a scene that harkens back to Action Comics #1 with lifting up a car. It's at one point that I thought, I don't know if you did. I'm sure you did it on purpose, but it's just fantastic. And uh yeah, man, it works really well. I
Thank you.
I got I want to give a call out to the cover of issue 3 here, because this is and I got it. I love how, I don't think I've ever seen it done before. I love how you're using the stars that the stripes, the white and red stripes of the American flag, to almost be like the strings, puppet strings. I think that is, if that's ever been done before, I'm not aware of it. But that's brilliantly done. And
That
symbolically, with the chess pieces on the board, you see Kent, and you see his alien hybrid, which also could be his alien self or his father, sort of above him, and then being controlled by what looks like a military official, who I believe would be I think maybe a Colonel Winter in the story itself. And then we got Marissa there. This is, I love covers like this. That the best covers to me are the ones that thematically identify, this isn't a scene in the story, obviously, but it has all the themes that are there, and it's all played out
Mhm.
well. So I'm curious, whose idea was this for the cover? Because that was brilliantly done.
I mean, Adrian just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
It was forgive my French, it was fucking insane. I mean, he's been such a joy to collaborate with
Mhm.
on these covers, and every time he brings it, the issue 3 cover is my favorite. His variant for issue 3 is my favorite cover out of the whole series so far. I know he's really partial to the issue 4 variant that he did that's right above me, and it's a wonderful cover. But as the writer, there's something about this one that really just speaks, I think, to the dynamic of power in this series. And so we ended up nicknaming it the King's Gambit, because it's a move in chess where you basically manipulate the other player's king into moving around and opening up a spot for you to check the king. And I mean, it's incredible. Like, if you were to go through where this cover started in the initial sketches, and as Adrian and I kind of continued to talk and about what we wanted this cover to represent for this book, he just kept adding layers and layers and layers, and there's just so much to uncover
Mhm.
uh, about this cover art. And it's brilliant, man. It's so good, and you should have seen, like, the coloring notes that he gave. He actually he was so invested in that cover that he actually, so after we got the finished colors back, we had to make a couple modifications, and he actually did some finishes on the colors to really help them represent best what he was going for here. And he's gonna be huge one day. I could say that full heartedly. And he just whenever I sit down to collaborate with him and talk about design and what we're going for, it is always a highlight. I always get really excited when it comes down to designing covers, because I think that you know those types of conversations and discussions really get the cogs turning for me. So yeah, I mean, he killed it. And I actually I was just showing Comic Boom. Uh, we do prints for all of the Kickstarters, and I actually ended up ordering these sort of metallic foil versions of this cover as well, which really excite me. This came out super cool.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah. Sorry, I'm long-winded as always. That is something that will never change. But I hope I answered whatever the question was because I forgot what it was.
Yeah, I know there's a question in the chat. Chris Barrett just asked, "Who's your favorite comic book artists?" And did that have any maybe bearing or inspiration for your choice of Zalazar for your art for Helix Project?
Oh man, who is that's such a loaded question. I'm the
Yeah.
most indecisive when it comes to like picking favorites. Um, I'd have to go with David Mazzucchelli. Um, in terms of alt, it's tough. It's tough because it's like with David Mazzucchelli. I mean, he just kind of came into comics and did like two of the greatest stories ever, and then dropped the mic for the most part and decided to teach. So like it's hard because I want to give this classification to a comic book artist that is like, knees in the dirt, like getting down, making comics like month after month after month after month.
Yeah.
But Mazzucchelli was just so brilliant. His ability to design a page and to draw the eye and to do an insurmountable amount of storytelling with such simple imagery, and he's of that sort of school of storytelling as the same school of storytelling as like the Darwin Cooks and the Will Eisners, where they could do some ridiculously detailed page, but they're so intelligent that they will remove as much detail as they possibly can, and what detail they do give is just so well placed and executed. Um, the simplicity of the line itself as a component of the page, and what they're doing with shadows and lighting in order to tell a story is just ridiculous. I mean, there's this really great moment in Daredevil Born Again. It's such a quiet scene where you're in I want to say the corrupt police officer's kitchen, and the way David Mazzucchelli lays out the kitchen is just incredible. It's just incredible. I have his artisans edition of Born Again like up on my shelf over there. It's incredible. Um so yeah, I guess I might have to go Mazzucchelli. But like I said, I'm only slightly reluctant to say that because he doesn't have like a ridiculous body of work. But how do you deny a man who just came out and did like a top three story for both of the biggest publishers in the industry, and just was just like, yep, I did the thing and I'm done. Like, it's incredible.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you mentioned Born Again. I mean, Born Again is a story that, I mean, obviously it's classic, it's epic, and it's also been a story that's been referenced again and again and again. So,
Hmm.
as somewhat as it's an inspiration for your own story. My question is this: we're 3 issues of into Area 51 Helix Project, and this this is definitely and there's a mystery that's been built up here. This is a character driven tale, but it's also a government espionage mystery. I'm wondering, is does this have an ending? Is this going to can you would you be giving away too much? Can you answer that? Does this have a definitive ending? Is this open ended? Is there going to be room left open for future issues of Area 51 Helix Project, or is this a
Uh,
done in one sort of story that you have in mind?
so so this story ends. It has a definitive end. There is the way that we leave off at the end of issue 6. You're either gonna love me or hate me. There's no in between. I've decided the end of my first series was very much going to draw that line in the sand,
Yeah.
and I do so confidently. Um, but I've left it in a way that if I ever wanted to do some type of spin-off story, I might be able to, but
Yeah.
it's not a story that I'm going to tell unless I feel like it needs to happen or I feel particularly inspired to
Right.
do it. You know me. I mean, I'm very big on letting the story um, take its natural end. And I think that this story does have a very natural end, but I've put myself in a position where, maybe 10, 15 years from now, I do feel particularly inspired to tell another story in this world that I think will resonate. But, I won't compromise the integrity of this story in order to do it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does. It's actually it's refreshing because it's one of my ongoing frustrations with I think maybe it's just mainly big two writers is that they always have a tendency to sort of write for the trade or sort of like they're afraid to tell a story with an ending because that means they might be replaced with somebody who has another story to tell, and it's like you know that's not how it works. If you tell me a good story and you know it has something to say, I'm going to come back for more. And I still would prefer a story that has an ending in some way, either thematically or character wise or action based or whatever the case might be, than the alternative. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it was with this being my first comic book story. I really wanted to keep it as tight as possible. I see this inclination for a lot of guys who were in my position starting out, where they're like, I'm going to create this big connected universe and do big crazy explosive stuff, and it ends up being really bad, like really bad, because they not only haven't focused on like the craft of writing and creating comics, but they're so focused on like just the bigger, more superficial elements that are like really interesting. Like if you know what you're doing, they're really interesting toppings to your ice cream cone. But like who wants an ice cream cone filled with sprinkles, and like
yeah.
no ice cream, you know what I mean? So for me, the ice cream is just writing a tight story that people can connect with, and enjoy, and maybe learn something from. I don't know. I mean, I don't pretend to be a preacher, I'm 24. Somebody probably looks at me as like, man, this kid probably has absolutely no life experience. But um like I said, this is me kind of working out, I think, some very big philosophical questions, uh, and in order to do that well and effectively through the mechanism of a comic book story, I really wanted to keep it nice and tight. I mean, like cast of characters with like speaking parts. I think there's only like 5 characters with like real recurring roles. Only 6 issues. I don't know. Like I said, I wanted to prove to myself that I could write a story beginning, middle, and end, wrap it up, and do it all on my terms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're issue 3 is pretty much out now, and I think I'm on my way to doing that.
Let me ask you this: I know that you recently had an opportunity to speak with Dan Didio and even Jeff Lemire. I was wondering if you'd maybe share that experience. That must have rocked you to your core a little bit.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Just making connections in the industry. Um, yeah, I mean they're both absolute wealth springs of knowledge about the industry. Dan definitely gets way too much flack, and I've been saying this ever since like the story came out that he was going to be leaving DC Comics. He really does care, and I think ultimately that's what you want in the industry, whether you agree with his sentiments about like continuity and what should happen and what should not happen. I think that ultimately the fact that he cares and he's knowledgeable and he's capable is like that's what you want in comics. And Jeff Lemire is just like, I mean, for my money, is I would. I think you could make the argument he's the best writer in the industry right now.
Yeah,
Just with the quality of storytelling and the variety of storytelling that he's been able to employ,
yeah.
it's just insane. And yeah, that was really interesting. Like I'm on the call with Dan. I was telling Comic Boom, and he goes, "Yeah, in like 15 minutes, Jeff is gonna pop on." I'm like, "Jeff?" He goes, "Yeah, Jeff Lemire," and I'm like, "What?" Okay. Um, yes. But it's like I need some whiskey to like calm me down real quick. Um,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
did
I
you,
mean,
you get any good advice that you can share, or is it the stuff that you're just going to internalize and keep with you?
um, I mean, Jeff. I mean, he kind of reconfirmed and verbalized some of the things that I've taken out of what I've learned by reading his work and by studying his work, and it is that like conflict comes first. Conflict breeds story, and it really helps me tighten up on the conflicts that I'm already presenting in this book, and making sure that they are um, spanning and spawning more and more story that makes sense for these characters. And it's also like gauging what type of conflict and how the conflict is going to sort of play out in the sort of long run of the story. It's yeah, I mean, it was just a great experience. I couldn't be more thankful that these guys have decided to share some of their wisdom and experience with me. But in terms of specifics, yeah, it's hard to say, because the conversations that I've been having with Dan are a little bit more central to pitching a comic book to a larger publisher, and learning how to sell your story. So that's it's very different for me. I up until maybe a couple months ago, I was really uncomfortable like selling myself to people and selling my story, because I was always so afraid of giving up too much or giving not enough to pull people in. And he's really helped me kind of develop a barometer for being able to pitch and develop a log line for concepts in a way that makes them really appealing to both maybe a readership and a publishing company.
So how was the Comic Con experience? You mentioned the one individual came up and had a card of you that they signed. How was it? You expressed some insecurity about, or at least some initial insecurity about maybe selling yourself a little bit in terms of how much of yourself to reveal in your story. How was it interacting directly with people at comic conventions?
I mean, it's great. It's so cool because I mean, I started Pocket Watch Press, and I started creating these comics um, in the middle of a pandemic. And while it's really cool when people tag me in posts or reach out to let me know, there's something about like looking at the reaction on people's faces when you talk to them about your story, and you're able to be a little bit more human. Um, it's just a totally different and far more intimate experience being able to connect with people. And that was like a big talking point for me. When I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of people, I tell them that the thing that really carried me through the thing that really carried me through the pandemic was stories. Stories are the connective tissue between all of humanity, and it's a beautiful way to share yourself, and share a bit of who you are with other people, and allow them to interpret very core aspects of where you come from, and who you're basically manifesting. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic experience. It's a marathon though. Like, these conventions are you hustle. You gotta hustle. And unfortunately, with Baltimore, with it being my first show, I was kind of out in like Westworld. Like, I was so I did not have prime real estate at Baltimore Comic Con. So I had to make the most of it, but I was able to really, I think, have some really meaningful interactions with people, and that's what matters to me. I had somebody who he bought issue 1 on the first day of the show,
Mhm.
came back to me on the second day of the show. He's like, okay, I want 2 and 3. And that, like, it was a pretty quick exchange, but for me that was huge, because sometimes people buy the books and they don't always get to reading it, and the fact that this person was intrigued enough to read that first issue and then immediately came back like the next day before he spent money on anything else, and was like, I need to continue with this story. That meant a lot to me. And like you said there, like, the fact that somebody made like a trading card of me was
Yeah.
just like, I
Well,
I I was bamboozled.
well, I'm one to occasionally engage in conspiracy theory because it's fun, and I know that Danny Brown in the chat expressed condolences that that FedEx lost your books, and I figure that you know once you make it big, those 400 lost FedEx comic books are gonna they're gonna crop up, and they're gonna be like instant collector's items, and there's gonna be rumors about that those comics weren't really lost, they were stolen, and that is obviously it had a happy ending, but does insurance cover that? I'm just kind of curious. Does FedEx cover that? Was that like
um
how did you recover your loss there? Because that's 400 comics is a lot to lose. Just and
yeah, that was a huge pain in the ass. FedEx, I mean, I have no kind words for FedEx. I mean, they just really stalled the process, tried to get me to push back the claim. It was really my printer and my representative through Print Ninja. Um, that's been such a big help throughout this whole process. And you know, he had kind of volunteered to, um, you know, just he really put himself out there in order to try to rectify the situation. So I don't quite know, because they were the ones that ended up filing the claim. And you know, as soon as they started filing the claim, they were like, all right, we're gonna make another 400 copies, and we're gonna send this out to you ASAP. So you know, that was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. So, you know, if I can say anything, fuck FedEx, and thank you to Justin from Print Ninja. It's,
Okay.
you know, imagine that, like, you pay extra money to expedite 400 copies so that you can fulfill a Kickstarter, and you pay a premium. Like, I probably paid 5 times the rate for the expedited shipping as I did for the regular. And FedEx just like delivers it to the wrong address, loses the package, and here we are.
Yeah, it was funny because just the other day, and I'm going a little off, same topic, but just slightly different media. Just the other day, I was watching a YouTube channel because now the whole government operation, governments are opening up about aliens among us. They're opening up about, that they don't know what these unidentified craft are for that they have videotapes of for decades. And so more and more people are talking, and more government officials are being more open-minded and talking about aliens among us and Area 51 and the unexplained. And the timing, I mean, really, the timing of this comic, when you think about it, couldn't have been better. And that's why I just sort of got a nice smile on my face, because this is something that actually feels timely, and it's actually in the news. And I'm wondering, if have you been following any of that at all? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of timing, this would have been great if I could have released this when like everybody was planning to storm Area 51. I think that would have been like the best possible timing on the face of the earth. But unfortunately, I was like so early in the concept stage of building this story that it would have been kind of irresponsible of me to release it so early.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I have a background in molecular biology, and
Yeah, I could tell that
I
by the language. There are scenes that you have played out in issues 2 and especially issue 3, where you can tell the scientific language that you are using. It actually it fits quite well, and it reads quite naturally. So yeah, it's obviously that's to good effect. So
Yeah, I mean I mean there's some real science in here. Like there's real genetic science in this book. I've always hated when sci-fi was basically just fantasy with like a metal skin and beeping lights. Like I think fantasy is a wonderful genre, and there are a lot of things that you can do only in fantasy. But fantasy with metal skin is not sci-fi.
yeah,
So, you know, I mean I think it's a damn shame, for example, that like the Flash books don't use physics. Like I think it's really stupid, because you could do some interesting things. I mean, like if DC wants like a really good Barry Allen story, you're welcome to dial me up because I have a good one. Uh, but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think it's a shame when you don't like integrate real science in science fiction, because part of the idea of science fiction thematically is having a conversation about um capability versus ethics. You know, like you're often dealing with the idea that somebody has developed this thing that goes far and beyond what we ever thought possible. And a lot of the stories kind of boil down to, how should one use this? Should we use this? You know, are we responsible enough to engage with this piece of science fiction that you know, is capable of doing so much.
yeah.
So yeah, that was a big part of it. And with my background in genetic science, I mean, like the things that they're doing now with molecular biology is insane, specifically around genetics. I mean, you know, you have entire laboratories that are beginning to develop medicine that is genetically specified to you. Like that's incredible. Like it's and nobody knows that we've been working on this technology for 40 years.
And
And it's
do you think we got some of the tech from aliens?
no, okay, so you want my hot take
Sure, yeah.
with like alien conspiracies? Um I think that extraterrestrials are or were very responsible in the evolution of humanity. There comes a period where you know our long lost ancestors, um our the way that our physiology and anatomy was developing was going at such a slow rate, and there comes a period of about 4 million years where our cranial capacity quadruples in size, while every other major organ in our body maybe only changed by a differential of like an eighth of a percent over those 4 million years, but our brains quadrupled in size. So there had to have been something, some type of event over the course of those 4 million years that drastically changed the evolution of humanity. Be it extraterrestrials, who knows? Is it? It's kind of fascinating that like the moment the monkeys became dangerous and developed atomic weapons, that mass UFO sightings began across the world. You know, maybe
Yeah.
they're like, oh shit, the monkeys are dangerous now. We need to keep an eye on them. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, there's my tin hat conspiracy about. I do believe in extraterrestrial life. I think it's kind of ignorant not to. You know, it's very egocentric to think that we're the only sentient beings on the face of existence. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my tinfoil hat conspiracy.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I have no problem engaging. It's fun, and so what if we came from aliens? What's the difference if we came from apes or we came from aliens or they gave us a boost? I don't care. It's all good. I can't change who I am or who I
Yeah,
was. I can change who I
yeah,
am. I can't change who I was. Or
yeah. There's like this really interesting thing with humanity and their need to like rationalize a reason for their existence in order to like attribute like something special to it. And I don't. I mean, I am very much okay with the notion that like the fact that we're alive and sentient and have built a society is basically the result of random atomic collision, billions of years ago. And here we are. Like I'm okay with that. I think life is what you make it, and I'm like that's a hill I'm willing to die on. Like when I kick the bucket, whenever it is, however I do it, I would rather live my life knowing that I left it all on the court. you know. So that's yeah. There's my philosophy on life, folks.
well, and there's also some pretty good philosophies about life. Right in the beginning of issue 3 of Area 51, the Helix Project. I'm just going to quote right from it. And it says, so here's to us and to figuring out the who's, what's, when's, where's, and why's that we've all been asking since forever. We may not have some government black site operation coming after us and our DNA, but we all have to stare down the things in this world that try to tell us who we are. If this comic
Mm.
book does anything, it should remind you that we write our own stories. We decide who we are, and then you thank us. And uh, well, so far by issue 3, I think I'm asking all the right questions, and it's certainly the
Mm.
adventures of young Kent as he's trying to navigate his own identity it's quite apparent, and it's obvious in the art. It's obvious in your passion for this project, and I couldn't be happier to know that this thing is going to continue until the end, and we're going to get an ending, which is wonderful.
I mean, you might not like the ending, but you're gonna get an ending.
I guess when you say I may not like the ending, that's curious. I suppose. Is it going to be like it's? I'm old school, so I think Dallas. Is it all going to be a dream? Kent's going to wake up and.
No, I'm not that bad of a writer. I'm not gonna make it all a dream. We're not gonna act like it didn't happen. We're not gonna like Deadpool 2 end credit scene and be like, yeah, we just found like this technology to travel back in time and none of it matters. No, it's all gonna matter. So have you seen The Sopranos?
I have. You mean the final episode of
You,
Sopranos?
you know how divisive that is,
Yeah,
right? Obviously, it's quite divisive.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
It's going to
think
be
about
like
that.
that, really?
It's going to be divisive. I think. I
Well, The
think.
Sopranos was divisive because everything went to black, and then there was this controversy about he was actually killed, and it was him being shot, and the whole show was from his perspective, and so it's interesting that you draw that analogy.
Yeah.
So and now you got me really curious.
It's I mean, I think I built a reputation for pretty crazy last pages. Issue 1 and then issue 2 got even crazier, and then issue 3 got like balls to the walls crazy. The last page stinger of issue 6 is I think it's going to be a little bit of a gut punch for sure.
Huh.
Yeah, by far the wildest ending to any of the books, by the way. So,
Well, you got my appetite whetted. So, uh, any final thoughts about any teasers you can give us for issue 4?
um, hmm. It's funny because now that I've written all 6, sometimes I forget what happens in each issue. Like
Yeah.
somebody was like, "Oh, there's this thing in issue 2," and they start talking to me about it. I was like, "That was an issue 2? Really?" Like it's just I don't know. It's because you got to think, man. Like I wear so many hats. So as I'm giving art notes on issue 4, I'm I think at the start of writing. So think about this. This was when it was out at its worst. When I was giving art notes on issue 3, I was editing issue 4 and writing issue 6 at that time. So, you know, forgive me if it's hard to like remember exactly what happens in every issue because I just had so many wheels spinning. Um, but final words, read stories that matter. Um, read stories that you might disagree with. Read stories that come from people that might have a different philosophy on life than you do. And as long as they explain it well, I think, or as long as they develop that information well, I think you're going to come out learning something. And you don't have to agree with it. I don't think learning means that you agree with what's presented in front of you. I think it's just going to open up your perspective. Um, and this story being so crucially about identity, perspective is a huge like it's just like a huge part of this story. And yeah, so check it out. Consider
Yeah.
giving the book a look. I apologize. I'm rambling a lot. I've yet to finish my first cup of coffee for the day.
And it's gone
But
cold by now, so
oh yeah. But I'm shameless, man. Like I'm a college student. I'll drink cold coffee. I don't care.
well,
Um,
well, let me
but
ask you,
yeah, no,
where can
go ahead.
before I ask you, because I'm really curious to know what you're currently reading, other than your own working on your own stuff, what comics you're currently reading or books you're reading for your own inspiration. But tell people where they can find you. We're gonna have links below at the end of this interview, of course, for people. But where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on most major social media platforms at Pocket Watch Press. That's my company. There's a link tree in the description below that'll lead you to all of my social media, including my shop. There's a really cool like limited edition shirt that I had released for like around Halloween time that I'm gonna be taking off the shop probably in the next couple months. So he has like the OG Helix Project shirt. Um, but it's called the Gods, Monsters, and Men t-shirt, and it features the design behind me for the issue 4 cover art with a quote that roughly says something like stories are often told about the tales of gods and monsters and men, but this one really only concerns the monsters. And it's a quote from one of the issues, some dialogue from one of the issues, and it's my favorite piece of merchandise that I've designed so far. So consider
Awesome.
giving it a look. The shirts are super soft, by the way. I think Boom can
Oh,
oblige.
they are. They really are. They're form fitting. They're form fitting. There's this. It's funny because there's this advertisement going on Instagram right now about some guys actually trying to advertise selling better quality shirts, and it's just plain shirts, and he's saying they're all form fitting. It's like, well, yeah. Well, I guess I get lucky, but I get form fitting shirts all the time. But yeah, this is good. The arms, it's form fitting on the arms, and it's a nice soft. It's a softer cotton. It's definitely it's higher quality, frankly, than I've come to expect, frankly, from just from online buying online shirts. So yeah, it's definitely it's a good bang for your buck.
Yeah, give it a look. The new shirt on the website's super cool. You can also pick up copies of the first 3 issues there physically, digitally, other merchandise, and all of that. All of the proceeds of that go directly into the production of the book, which is really cool. So you're directly contributing. And if I can say anything, definitely keep up with what we're doing here. Via You can use the link in the description. Sign up for our newsletter. The newsletter provides a really intimate experience into this sort of day to day of creating comics, the successes, the downfalls. You get a lot of input on what we do, whether it's the design of products that we create, whether it's an initiative. We've done giveaways so far. We're going to be doing a huge holiday giveaway this year to kind of celebrate the first year of Pocket Watch Press.
Wonderful.
Um, so yeah, and I'll say this, like, one of the things that I've been most proud of in terms of compliments from Kickstarter backers is that the rewards are always really high quality, from the print quality to the comics, which are 2 times the thickness of the paper stock of what
Yeah.
you're getting at Marvel right now, to the premium quality of the shirts that are made out of Bella canvas, to even the prints. I mean, the prints are almost a cardstock thickness, with really high resolution printers. So we're doing our best to give you as much bang for your buck, so much so to the extent that I really don't make much money off of these things. For me, early in the career, it's about delivering value and letting you know that um, I am really trying to keep my readers and my consumers' best interest at heart when it comes to developing these things. I
Yeah.
want to build a reputation of quality, whether it's the physical product, or the content of my stories. So yeah, feel free to give everything a look, and link in the description, and keep an eye out for the next Kickstarter campaign. If you do want to wait to read the Helix Project, issue 4 campaign might be the last Kickstarter where you will have the option to buy the first print of issue 1 as a part of a catch-up bundle, because we are running lower and lower on the first print of issue 1. So it may become extinct, in terms of what you're able to get. And it, pending the popularity, we may do a second print of issue 1, but I'll be commissioning a different cover for the second print. So the original covers for issue 1 you will not be able to buy on the front of a comic book ever again. So keep that in mind. Hop on
That's
it while you
good.
can.
And I got mine all signed by you, so I'm happy, man. I'm still saying when you become that famous writer on Batman, and and all those issues of Area 51 are going to be selling out. I gotta keep a couple of them in 9.8 condition because
Mm,
unless I can unless somebody's going to come forward and find those 400 comics that we're missing, so we're going to have to treasure the issues that we have. But well, Trev, do you want to? What are you? I'm curious what you're reading. You and I, on another note, uh, while I know you're busier than hell with Area 51, I know
mhm.
that we last did a collaboration with Chase. You collaborated with Chase of a Comic Source, and I. We reviewed Future State, and you could be you could always be the guy. You're the go-to guy to give us the cold, harsh truth about some particular facts about
Uh,
certain artistic and scripting styles, and you can be quite, you know, perhaps overly truthful about your opinion at times. I'm curious, is there anything good out of the big two that you're currently reading at all, or are you
yeah.
just sort of shaking your head constantly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've definitely been into a lot more indie comics. I mean, there's just an incredible amount of talent. And there are a lot of really quality publishers out there right now, between Image, Aftershock, Vault, Boom. I mean, it's incredible. It's a phenomenal time to be a comic book fan. Um, in terms of what I'm reading that's coming up now, I mean, Nightwing is like the best book at DC, right? Like we can like I can die on that hill, and I'm pretty comfortable dying on that hill. I mean, also the Nice House on the Lake has been an absolute banger. From
Yeah.
DC, from Marvel, I mean, Chip Zdarsky is doing a phenomenal job on Daredevil. I think he's probably going to go down as a top 5 Daredevil writer of all time. I don't think that's even much of a question, to be honest.
Yeah.
In terms of other books that I'm reading, I just finished the first issue to Radio Apocalypse by Ram V and Anand RK, the creative team around Blue and Green, which is an OGN release from Image about a year and a half ago. Blue and Green is like one of, if not my favorite comic of the last decade. So give
Oh
that a
wow.
look.
Yeah.
That was a big one for me. Um, I've been picking up Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' Reckless original graphic novels. I just got the third one a couple weeks ago. I haven't read the third one yet, but I've read 1 and 2. Let me look at my bookshelf, to be honest with you. Um, um,
Yeah.
I've been picking up Primordial by Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino, but I haven't
Yeah.
read it.
Yeah.
Um,
I've
oh,
read the
oh,
first
you,
2 issues. It's pretty good.
yeah,
Primordial.
I haven't
Yeah.
gotten into it yet. I think when issue 3 comes out, I'm gonna binge the first 3 issues. You did ask me about Big Two books. A surprise hit for me that I have really been enjoying from DC has been Batman the Imposter. It's sort of like a
Oh,
tie-in to the movie universe stuff. One of the screenwriters of the film, Mattson Tomlin,
yeah.
has been writing it with Andrea Sorrentino.
Yeah. Great
Um,
artist. Yeah.
I haven't read the second issue yet, but that first issue was fantastic. I mean, such an economy of language, fantastic pacing. Usually screenwriters have a pretty rough time transitioning to comics and will sometimes take years
Yeah.
to make that leap. I think there are a lot of writers at DC right now that come from animation that have been doing it for years and have still not gotten it. So this is a high compliment, and it psychologically what they're doing with the character and with that mythos, I think is really fascinating. And it gets me genuinely excited for the film. So yeah, Batman like the Imposter was a really really big surprise hit for me.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's I know there's quite a bit you and I could talk about. We have our old collaborations of Let's Talk Comics, and I'm sure that we're going to be
Mm.
talking comics more in the days to come. We'll figure something out because I know I've just been busy with my schedule and some chaos in my life, et cetera, and I know that you're busy. But Trevor, Trevor, thank you. I'm so glad you came on, and it was so good for me to sort of get the rust off and sort of I haven't done a live stream in a while, so it was nice to be able to do this with you. I'm so happy for you, and congratulations with Area 51, the Helix Project. It is really good, and
Thanks, man.
it makes me think, and it poses all the right questions that I think in this toxic political, cultural, socio toxic, crazy world we live in. A little bit of self evaluation and introspection on the part of all of us in terms of sort of reevaluating our origins, who we are, and what we stand for is I think it's good. And
Mm.
hey, why not throw some aliens in there and some alien DNA while you're at it? And that's what you've done, and that's what comic books are all about. So I just want to thank you, my friend. Thank you for
Mm.
everything. Thank you for coming on and being my guest. It's been a pleasure. And any final words?
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you, to everybody for popping by and checking this out. Sorry, I've been perhaps even more rambly than usual. Like I said, I I my caffeine addiction does me no favors earlier in the day. I'm pretty nocturnal. So but yeah, I hope anybody listening, watching, what have you, considers checking the book out. I've put a lot of myself into this. I've been a meticulous student of the craft of creating comics, and I really think that I put my best foot forward, and that as a creator, not just as a writer, but as a comic book creator, that's a part of the ecosystem of developing the greatest entertainment media of all time, comics.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've really grown a lot. Each and every issue, there are moments where somebody will compliment me on something on issue 1 or 2, and I'm like, really? I thought I was kind of trashy, but lo and behold, it should serve to say that I never want to look back at anything that I've ever done and go, that's better than what I'm doing now. And I firmly believe that every time I step up to page 1, panel 1, and the empty white abyss of a blank script page, that I will proceed and write something better than I've ever done. And that is my goal each and every time. So I hope that you'll consider giving it a look. I've had the incredible fortune of working with just some fantastic talent from all around the world. They've helped me grow so much as a creator, as a storyteller, and I look forward to what we do in the future. Something to keep an eye out for is obviously the Helix Project campaign launching in January. Follow us on social media. Check out our newsletter. Um, you can actually, I don't know if you can like zoom in super hard, but I actually put the QR code to our newsletter there in between one of the gears. So you can scan that and sign up there. Um, and that's how you'll be able to stay most up to date on everything that we're doing. But I had something else to say, but my decaffeinated brain 100% lost it. That is probably a sign for me to stop talking. But yeah, thank you for having me on. Boom. Thank you to everybody who's decided to listen to me ramble, and I hope you'll consider giving this book a look. Support indie comics, man. Support the next generation of creators. Don't be bootstrapped by brands and intellectual properties. Um, decide what you want to read be, because let me rephrase that. Make your choices about what you read based on what you enjoy reading, not because of some stupid incentive variant or because it has a character in it. I think that story supersedes all. So yeah, there's a philosophy that you didn't ask for.
Well, the Area 51, the Helix Project, is a story worth reading, and it does have something to say. So thanks again, Trevor, and thank you for all those who are watching. And until next time, we'll catch you later.